This report on the Argovian campaign has been produced for public dissemination by renowned historiator William Connor. The war for the Pariah Nexus was a gargantuan undertaking and one of enormous importance. The Necrons had unleashed a new weapon against the galaxy, one that threatened its very soul. The Argovian System was but one of many systems in the Pariah Nexus, and the war for it was just as apocalyptic, revelatory, and costly as any other. The Argovian System lies to the galactic southwest of the Pariah Nexus. This fell region created by the blasphemous magics of the Necron race. Even as I write, the Xenos' hideous pylons still tower over the sector's worlds. Officially, it is still known as being part of the Nephilim sector, though few now call it that. A tragic state of affairs, but one the glorious warriors of His Imperial Majesty's Armed Forces fight, even as I put quill to parchment. When Battlegroup Khalides pierced the borders of this region, none knew what to expect. The effect known as the stilling, called by some the soul death, was among the most horrifying discoveries. Those so afflicted lose all hope and motivation. They are racked by paranoia, lethargy, and exhaustion. How this takes root in an individual we still do not understand, but there is one apparent safeguard: faith in the Emperor. We suffered many losses in those early days, but Emperor be praised, the battle group was able to rally, consolidate, and achieve important victories. Tales of these important victories include the Battle of the Gates, the Death March of Paradise II, and the Vi Almus counterpush, which can be read in my other accounts. As his efforts yielded military results, Groupmaster Marin planned for the wider reconquest of the Pariah Nexus. Argovon was many light years to the galactic south of the northwest frontier where the battle group first arrived. It was Groupmaster Marin's intention to advance methodically through the region, not committing to significant drives unless he could be sure systems and worlds to the rear were purged of the Necron presence. Due to the effects of the Necron's arcane technology, there were no calls for aid coming from elsewhere in the Nexus, save from one system, Argovon. It was this that led Marin to dispatch a task force to it. A quick assessment revealed that one of the system's world had a very significant ecclesiastical presence, meaning it could very well serve as a vital staging post or relative safe zone for refugees fleeing from other systems. When Archmagos Archaeogeologor Akuminor Zor revealed that the Adeptus Mechanicus had a Noctilift extraction site on the world of Veronica in the system, securing the region became a necessity to prevent the Necrons securing this vital resource. Task Force 11 was quickly formed. It was only later discovered, and at great cost, that not all of the calls for aid were from loyal citizens desperate for salvation. Several examples of these terrible treacheries include the Hive Boric consumption, where a dozen Astra Militarum regiments disappeared in the city's underhives, the collapse of the Ingard Bridge, which saw thousands of armoured vehicles of the Tuzan tank corps plunge into a miles-deep ocean, and of course the Night of Gnashing Teeth, all of which I detail in my other accounts. The Argovian system has been in Imperial records for approximately 8,000 years, first mentioned by name only in fragments of the Catalogue of the Regions of the Galaxy Southward. Local myth talks of a great hero called Veronica Argovon who discovered the system and was determined to bring new worlds into the Emperor's domain. She is described in the Canticles of Our System's Discovery as tallest of the tall and strongest of the strong, bravest of the brave and truest of the true. Many other texts my researchers and I have praised from this system's ruined archives and libraries echo similar ideas. My research has concluded that it is far more likely the case that she was in fact a rogue trader from a long disgraced, heavily indebted and impoverished family. I further suggest that by sheer fortune, she happened to stumble across the region and the enormous mineral wealth on the world she so humbly named directly after herself. It takes little imagination to think that she might have wanted to correct her story and restore some regard to her family's name. Although local accounts are terribly transparent in their lies and hyperbole, I have not shared my discovery. Until now, of course. The great unwashed, public, need their stories now, I dare say, more than ever. No world in the system has a sparser population as Veronica, but none are more strategically significant. The battles that raged here for the Noctilith deposits are easily among the most savage and brutal in the entire Argovian conflict. Here, Adeptus Mechanicus forge shrines sat built atop or alongside Necron Extractio Arcana, and millions died among them and around countless other objectives. One forge shrine sat at the base of a series of low rolling hills known locally as the Humps of Kafusa. It took 8 months for Imperial forces to seize this high ground from the Necrons, and it cost some 2 million lives. Even this was only possible thanks to the direct involvement of the Tomekeeper's Third Company and a decisive charge by multiple lances from House Boros. I give this as an example of the uncompromising nature of the battles here. Anything offering the slimmest tactical advantage to aid in the capturing, saving or holding of the Adeptus Mechanicus Noctilith extraction sites was fought for with fanatical intensity. And rightly so. It is of little doubt that if we were to save this part of the Nephilim sector and beyond, then the secrets of Black Stone must be revealed. And we must not allow the Necrons to secure any more of that. The world of Saronic is a strange world of contradiction. On one hand, its population is poor, nomadic, and the prey of extreme fauna that top the planet's food chain. On the other hand, it has been a favourite of the entire subsector's nobility to travel there to hunt and claim pelts, claws and skulls of the largest creatures for display. Thus, part of it is designed for the rich, well-protected and luxurious. In other parts, day-to-day life is an almost impossible struggle for the populace, the remotest of which are developmentally still little more than flint-wielding savages. A particularly unusual geographical feature of Saronic is its very large lakes of high alkaline liquids. Though once thought to be devoid of life, it came as a great surprise to the troops of the 19th Irakidan Hastati and the 3rd Irakidan Ballistas, as well as the battle sisters of the Order of the Ivory Blade, when Necrons appeared on the shores of Lake Shiral from a dolmen gate that must have been at the lake's bottom. The Battle of the Shiral Shore was an act of containment. It went on to involve dozens of Astra Militarum regiments, as well as elements of several Adeptus Sororitas orders. The combined forces both attempted to stymie the never-ending flow of Necrons on the scores of mile-long shorelines. The world of Argovon is where the system's fortune was made so many millennia ago. A temperate world ideal for human habitation, Argovon has rare mineral wealth. While in few number, its deposits are unusually rich in materials found on barely 1 in 1,000 systems, materials the Adeptus Mechanicus have sought avidly. That being said, extensive mining has created a man-made fault line through the middle of the planet known as the New Argovian Fault or Goria's Fault. The surrounding area is beset by serious earthquakes, tsunamis and volcanic eruptions on a regular basis, which in the past have cost millions of lives. It was upon this world that Task Force 11 encountered significant gene-stealer cult presence. The world of Argolish is the Argovian System's ecclesiastical capital. Huge portions of its land are given over to colossal basilicas, cathedrum, chapels, chancels, and sanctuaries. Even structures not directly dedicated to the worship of the Emperor, such as hab blocks and administratum offices, have been designed to resemble sacred sites. The mightiest of cathedra are city-sized and heavily fortified, great citadels raised up to honour the God Emperor's name. It was here that the effect of the stealing was its weakest, so it was here that the Necrons struck hardest. Colossal hosts marched from dolmen gates, and tomb fleets darkened the skies. The 811th Violan Blackguard won renown for their 100-day running battle through the great gardens of St. Bartholomew, the Pure of Heart. I write in awe, recollecting the daring strike of a host of Terminator armour-clad warriors of the Adamantine Lions, who slew a Necron lord and number of his council. The confusion this caused undoubtedly brought the time needed for the 82nd Varkhain Jackals of the Militarum Tempestus to evacuate the priceless mosaic of the most glorious emperor while he yet walked among us from the small chapel that held it. The world of Azo is a failing agri-world. Production has fallen to 10% of levels from 4 decades ago. The cause itself is claimed to be highly mysterious. 3 successive planetary governors have been instilled and subsequently executed for incompetence. It is vital for the Imperial war effort in the region that the world's productivity is restored. When Task Force 11 arrived in system, Azo was the planet closest to being completely stilled. Battle sisters of a number of orders, including the Order of the Argent Shroud, Our Martyred Lady, the Wounded Heart, and the Sublime Adoration, deployed to the planet in droves, alongside Frateris militia brigades and regiments of the Astra Militarum with thousands of attached Ministorum priests. These forces, inflamed with righteous faith, were dropped onto a world in the grip of a Necron Tombworld's awakening. The planet furthest from the system's star, Hishria, is in a state of never-ending winter. Its surface is laced with jagged mountain chains, vast inhospitable tundras, dark seas, and hyperactive cryovolcanoes. The majority of the planet's population is nomadic, following the megashoals of helicoprioids over the freezing ocean on large hunting vessels. Most of the remainder live in one of the dozens of hive cities that sit atop the world's thermal vents, suffering a life of severe harshness. Most are committed to work in extremely dangerous gas mines or guard the tunnels from horrifying frostworm incursions. Despite its remoteness, many Argolician missionaries have travelled here to preach. The populace is thus hardy, strong-willed, and faithful. The planetary governor, Apondius Flax, was quick to respond to the Necron incursion, as well as to provide as much aid as possible to Task Force 11. In one notable engagement, the Hishrian mountain men set explosives on the underside of the ice of a frozen lake. With great discipline and courage, they lured thousands of Necrons onto the surface before springing the trap, detonating the charges and sending the Xenos automatons into the depths. When considering the forces of the Argovian campaign, no complete and fully accurate record was ever made of the forces that made up Task Force 11. Due to the hasty nature of its formation and the disorder in the early stages of the Pariah Nexus campaign. There were also the logistical and bureaucratic challenges of the Indominus Crusade as a whole. Elements of battle groups and task forces were lost in transit into a battle zone. Individual ships and refugees from around the galaxy found themselves within task forces, having encountered them by chance and accompanied them on their missions. Other forces were given additional missions that were never logged, whether by accident or design. Those fleets and battle groups that exist today do not closely resemble those that set out from Terra years ago, as some of their constituent elements have been destroyed and others have joined them. Forces of the Adeptus Astartes have generally come and gone as they pleased, nor is the situation dissimilar for the Adeptus Sororitas, Adeptus Mechanicus, and the forces of Nightwells and Knightly households. Field Marshal Janred Remco Hinflager was the fifth son of a noble family and joined the 56th Gobian Assault Guards of the Astra Militarum during his adolescence, serving as a cadet on the staff of mid-ranking officers. Assessment reports from his seniors state that, even in his youth, he had a remarkable grasp of the Tactica Imperium and committed swaths of it to memory. He was a member of the 56th Gobian for 37 years, eventually rising to command of the entire regiment. During this time, he was involved in numerous rebellion suppressions as well as wars against Xenos foes. He earned the Imperial Medallion for commanding his company in a successful assault on a traitor headquarters, which had withstood an 8-month-long siege on the world of Daedok. After promotion to commander of the regiment's 17th Battalion, he orchestrated the masterful defence of Bulwark 9 during the height of War Snakrat. There he organised a perfect strategy of feinting and rapid counterattacks whilst fighting in the front lines alongside his battered troops. Though by the time of the Argovian campaign he had long since been promoted above the rank of a regimental commander, the 56 always served alongside him, unofficially calling themselves Janred's Own. It is a sign of the extraordinary bond between the High Field Marshal and his old regiment that he permitted the insubordination in the use of his first name. I suspect it is certain that other senior officers looked down upon such a practice as improper, but Hinflager's combat record speaks for itself. The campaign was a further 40 years after he last directly commanded his old regiment, yet so very rarely was he found remotely wanting. His tally of victories was enormous. He was responsible for the salvation of Langarus and the Third Purge of Artes, which are wars taught in the Imperial Academies throughout the Imperium. I take no shame in stating that I shed many a tear upon hearing of his death when it came. Not a day goes by that I do not beseech the Emperor to grant us vengeance. The Lord of Steel and Night will pay. In regards to the Xeno forces of the Argovian campaign, what I could learn of our enemy's strength in the Argovian system has been pieced together from after-action reports, servo-skull-picked recordings, and other fractured information sources. It is not impossible that the presence of certain Necron dynasties has never been noted, or that those Imperial forces to encounter them were destroyed entirely before they could fully log and identify their enemies. The Necron order of battle, if such a thing has ever been used by the Necron, is virtually impenetrable in terms of one's own ability to understand how it functions. It has only been possible to formulate some idea of the strength of some Necron dynasties through careful analysis of the ritualistic boasting some appear to indulge in at the outset of particularly large engagements. The example of the Megalith Ice Ravine massacre springs to mind, but for that see my full account of the fighting for Hishria for the complete telling of this abysmal disaster. It is clear without any doubt in my mind that the Sazarkan dynasty and Arushk dynasty were present in force, with the Sazarkan by far the most widespread and dominant. There is some confusion around the presence of other dynasties due to the extreme reverence in which they hold lords of the Sazarkan dynasty. Some are so intertwined with this dominant force it is nigh impossible to distinguish them. Scattered reports also told of the presence of Eldari, Records suggest that between 4,000 and 5,000 officers and troops of the Astra Militarum were executed for spreading malicious rumours, lying to a superior, wasting a superior's time, and gross negligence for reporting the sightings of these enigmatic creatures. Through my own painstaking research, with some gratitude to my colleagues, and no doubt the intervention of the Emperor himself, I was able to ascertain that the sightings of the Eldari were of troops from the Alatok craft world and a mask of harlequins known as the Dreaming Shadow. However, I have little doubt that whatever the goals they seek to achieve are little in line with our own and are to our detriment. And so ends the first part of this report on the Argovian campaign, with the second part being released in due time. I have been Historiator William Connor, sending out my hearty thanks to you, my dear listeners, noble fans, and indeed esteemed patrons.